Welcome into lcpioneers.com live, presented by PiosStream, as we keep you connected with student athletes, coaches, alumni, and different members from throughout the Lewis and Clark College community twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, with all of our past shows available to watch on demand on our YouTube page at youtube.com/lcpios. Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Goff. I am the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark. We are the Pioneers based out of Portland, Oregon, and a member of NCAA Division III with over 430 institutions nationally, a chance for our student athletes to compete on a national scale as part of the 9-institution Northwest Conference, institutions from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington, and Lewis and Clark competing in 19 intercollegiate athletic programs across 13 head coaches. It's a really exciting opportunity right now as the summer's kind of winding down. We get a chance to get ready for the fall, and we look forward to sharing more with you throughout the course of the summer and into fall 2021. As we've been doing since we switched to 2 shows per week, we have looked at having 2 guests per show, and that'll be the case today as we'll talk to Josh Walter, who's the Vice President for Advancement at Lewis and Clark, about a new campaign for the college, and we'll see how that impacts athletics as well. And then we'll have Robert Wang join us, men's golf alumnus from the class of 2019, coming up a little bit later in the program. We invite you to get in touch with us. Of course, you can through the Facebook Live comments. We always like to see what you have to say or questions you have for any of our guests. And then, of course, our email address is sports@lclark.edu, a chance for you to get in touch with us via email with suggestions maybe for a future guest that you want to see. We've had a great time staying connected not only with our current student athletes and coaches and those members across the college community, but of course our alumni, and that's been a great part of having lcpioneers.com live on the air since the last part of March 2020. You can also stay in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram. LC Pioneers is our handle on both of those platforms, and on our Facebook Live page, facebook.com/lcpios. If you miss any of our shows, I mentioned the YouTube page. You can get in touch with us there, but you can also do so through the fan zone at lcpioneers.com. We have all of our past shows available to watch, and then you have our live headlines, the updates that are on our page, including over 110 Lewis and Clark Pioneers as part of the Northwest Conference Scholar Athlete list. You have Jordan Gonzalez from baseball, Alexis Traeger from women's rowing as the first team selections for that Northwest Conference Scholar Athlete list. It was a really cool honor for both of them. And then, of course, Ann Doris, the new head coach of Lewis and Clark women's basketball, who was on the show just a couple of weeks back. You can find all of those interviews on our YouTube playlist at youtube.com/lcpios. All right, let's get into our show for today. Our first guest, of course, Josh Walter joins us, who is the Vice President for Advancement at Lewis and Clark College. And Josh, this has been one of my favorite parts about the show, is getting to connect with people across the campus community, and of course, an exciting campaign that we're going to talk about, both in general and specific to athletics. But we do this with almost everybody who's been on the show. The origin story. What brought you to Lewis and Clark in the first place? Give us your origin story.
Okay. Great to be here, Ryan. It's awesome. I love what you're doing with this and really excited to be here. So my origin story, I'm a Northwest guy in general, grew up some in the Portland area, but then really sort of the formidable years of middle school and high school up in Mukilteo, Washington, a suburb of Seattle. Played all sports growing up, all through high school too, football, basketball, track, baseball, everything. I'm a sporty guy. Was recruited to play football at Claremont McKenna College. Played all 4 years of football there. Was a captain my senior year. Then also finally after that played a little rugby as well as a club sport. And so I'm a Division III athletics guy, right? And all of my friends to this day are either my high school teammates or my college teammates. Keep in touch. So I get the student athlete aspect and what this really means, beyond just the sport, but lifelong learning and relationships and things like that. So I did ROTC in college, went off into the Army for some time, found my way back to my alma mater, Claremont McKenna, worked in the alumni relations office, worked in the development office, kind of made my way up there, saw that place through a great campaign, and then was recruited to come to Lewis and Clark to lead the advancement efforts here, really with the idea that I had done a part of a really successful campaign at Claremont McKenna, come here and do a campaign here, which kind of transitioned us into the campaign talk for Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a great opportunity for Lewis and Clark, the community at large, alumni, current staff, faculty, everyone who's involved. Uh, I have to ask, you mentioned coming to Lewis and Clark, being recruited to come up here. When you share what this campus is like, what a college so close to downtown Portland, Oregon is like, what are some of the highlights you share with those that you do brag about Lewis and
Sure.
Clark to?
Yeah, well, in fact, you kind of mentioned it. Really, that the thing I always bring up the most with people and talking about Lewis and Clark is our access to Portland, Oregon, and a major metropolitan area. That very few liberal arts colleges, in particular, are in or near metropolitan hubs, and we're very lucky to be that way, and kind of get the best of both worlds, being that we're on this really idyllic real estate up on Palatine Hill, where you can get that experience of a liberal arts college and have the small classes and sit under a tree and kind of contemplate life, right? But then you can put things into action with internships and externships and just working and whatever with all these organizations in Portland that we can connect with the college. So it's really a fantastic place and gives you kind of the best of both worlds as far as that small college experience is concerned.
Our first guest on the show is Vice President for Advancement at Lewis and Clark College. We're talking to Josh Walter on the show. All right, let's discuss it, right? This is the campaign. The kickoff was last month, Exploring for the Global Good. Give us the big overview of why this campaign is out.
Sure. So the big overview, the last time Lewis and Clark had a campaign was in the 90s, from 92 to 98. 75 million was the goal there and achieved it. So now it's been some time, too long, really, for an institution to have a campaign. But now we're off and running with the campaign Exploring for the Global Good. The ultimate goal is 155 million. We've already raised 100 million to that extent. So we're really excited about that. We have 3 years now of the public phase of the campaign. Big projects, small projects, really every dollar counts. Any dollar given to anything at Lewis and Clark, which includes the law school and the graduate school as well, count to this campaign. So different from a campaign for a very specific thing, we have a lot of specific things that all fit into this campaign. And athletics specifically, a big project we're working on now is fundraising for the Houston Sports Complex, which would create turf field for the baseball program, renovated dugouts for softball program, make it more inviting as far as parking and landscaping and a restroom facility there. And what's exciting is with the outfield of the baseball field, we could convert it in a way in the fall to have it be for practice field for both soccer and lacrosse, which would be really exciting for us and just allow us to have more space, more facility for a lot of sports, really. So that's exciting. That's a big project. And we're also always fundraising for endowing coaching positions, endowing travel funds for each team, endowing recruiting funds for the coaches for those teams. We're looking into, and most likely we'll be doing a locker room or a locker campaign. Football program has done this already really successfully, where people can donate and kind of sponsor a locker and get their plaque on it, that kind of thing. Why not do that for all the sports, right? And all the lockers. And so that's a new program going forward. Probably this fall we'll be kicking that off. I think that'll be really exciting, help generate some funds for the teams to be able to do more of what they do best. So exciting time to be a Pio for sure.
Well, absolutely. And this is where we have the student athletes come on this show. We have a chance to talk to them during games and post game. And what's something that always resonates with me is how often they talk about the facilities that we have currently. And obviously, a campaign like this could have a big impact on improving what is already a really good thing. You look at the field, Griswold Stadium, Eldon Fixed Track is used by a lot of great track meets over the course of the summer, let alone the fact that our student athletes get to compete on it, right? And you talked about that background as a student athlete. When you think about facilities and helping you reach the highest level of competition and enjoy your experience the most, how can facilities, how can a campaign like this really have a big impact for a student athlete?
Sure, it can have a big impact on a lot of different ways. One, for recruiting, right? I mean, generally, in recruiting students, facilities can mean a lot, in particular, most for athletics, right? The state-of-the-art weight room, the training room, the facility that they're actually playing in, whether it's a gym or a field. having top-notch facilities in that regard certainly helps recruit people. But then also helps people perform better, right? If you have better equipment and you have better facilities, then you will perform better and do better for yourself. So, and looking back at my time at Claremont, a lot of people came before me and helped that institution in fundraising and donations to create really top-notch facilities there now. What I'm trying to do and what our team's trying to do and what many of our alumni are trying to do is create that cycle here more, that really pay it back. We as Pios, how it was when you were here, whether it was fantastic or you knew it could need a little help. Well, now we need your support to help the next generation of Pios really achieve their goals.
Josh Walter is the Vice President for Advancement at Lewis and Clark College. It is called the Exploring for the Global Good campaign. You can find out more information by going to go.lclark.edu/kickoff, and that's one area where you can find all the links. And the one thing I liked about that specific page was it shows videos specific to the people, the places, and the programs that this campaign is kind of divided in. What are some of the need to knows in terms of how people can get involved? What is needed most? Because this is a long plan, right? So what is needed most kind of in the short term as we look into fall 2021?
Sure. I mean, first things first is to gain momentum with all of our alumni and with parents too, that really every gift matters. And as I said, every gift does count to the campaign. So yes, we'll have some big gifts and we've already announced them already. But they tend to be very specific for things, right? So that $100 gift, that $500 gift of support for alumni fund, for the parents fund, for athletics as a whole, really helps the budgets of the people that control those budgets and institute those funds accordingly, right? Scholarship, financial aid is a big piece. We talk about recruiting students and the facilities, and that helps. But really, what helps more than anything is scholarship, right? And we lag behind some of our peers in the financial aid that we can provide and the students then that we can recruit and get to come here. Some just can't come because we can't give them enough aid. We want to fix that, right? We're missing out on some great students that would become incredible Pios. And it's really just because of the financial aid piece. So I would say if you gave me a number one priority of the campaign, it's to increase our endowment for financial aid so that we could recruit the best and the brightest as we feel like we should have.
All right, I keep mentioning fall 2021. I think it's on my brain because it is like a month away till fall sports report
Right.
to Lewis and Clark on campus, and then school's another couple weeks after that. And so there's homecoming, and of course with the pandemic, we missed out on that homecoming experience, homecoming and family weekend that's so great. What are you looking forward to most with homecoming this year?
Seeing people in person. I mean, you're right. It's been such a long year, and we've done these Zoom things, and they've been great, And I think, that, in fact, there's a lot of things I think we'll keep doing in this environment that we've learned. But there's really nothing like getting people together in person, having that camaraderie, seeing your friends, seeing your old coaches, your old teammates. Homecoming, I gotta imagine this year is going to be incredible, right? I think a lot of people will come out. That end zone in the stadium should be packed. We'll be outside so that if there's still fears that that should be helpful for people considering COVID restrictions and things like that. So let's pray for good weather. Even if it's not, we all know we're still out there, and so many of our alumni still come back for those types of things. So that'll be fun. Homecoming is going to be fantastic. Then even looking forward to reunion. We've missed 2 reunion cycles during COVID, this current summer and last summer. So this coming summer, in summer 22 in June, will be a huge reunion, right? I mean, it's basically all classes. Come on back, have a great time back on Palatine Hill, and we're really looking forward to executing on those fun events again.
Yeah, homecoming October 22nd through 24th. We look forward to that, homecoming football, etc. Josh Walter, thanks for coming on to talk about this campaign. Thanks for the work that you do to try to improve the experience for everybody involved at Lewis and Clark, and we certainly appreciate your time today.
Sure. I appreciate all of you, and thank you, Ryan. This is great. It's fun. Go Pios.
Yeah, roll Pios. That's Josh Walter joining us on lcpioneers.com live. You hear the campaign, Exploring for the Global Good. Go to go.lclark.edu/kickoff, and that's where you see that. Again, I want to emphasize the video component that they've done with this campaign and breaking it down into people, places, and programs, and trying to give you an idea of where all of the financial contributions that you make for this campaign definitely have an impact. And what'll be fun too is coming up in just a few minutes, the second part of our show, we'll talk to Robert Wang, who is a class of 2019 alumnus from Lewis and Clark Men's Golf. So it'll be fun to get a chance to talk to a recent alumnus about the experience at Lewis and Clark and maybe get that firsthand feel for why campaigns like this can have such a tremendous impact. I can't thank Josh enough for giving us not only the perspective of the campaign, but as a former student athlete, the chance to talk about sports and athletics and how this campaign can have a specific impact on Lewis and Clark sports. So when we come back, I'll introduce you to Robert Wang, who again is an alumnus of the men's golf program. We'll see what Robert's been doing since he graduated back in spring of 2019, and then we'll preview what's ahead into the later stages of July into August. As I mentioned, the fall sports, cross country, women's soccer, football, volleyball, will start to report in the middle of August, around the 16th, 17th or so. And that'll be exciting because we'll have student athletes back on campus. We'll get ready for a full schedule of sports. And if you missed any of those schedules already, just go to lcpioneers.com and you'll have a chance to see them there. That's at lcpioneers.com. All the fully fall sports, specifically those 4 sports that I mentioned, those schedules are up online right now. All right, we'll come back with more on lcpioneers.com live. Thanks for being with us on this Thursday, and we'll be right back.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts, because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.
My favorite spot on campus is like right outside the Dovecote, little benches, and there's flowers growing there, and you can get a little coffee at the Dovecote and sit there.
My favorite spot on campus is definitely the weight room. I get that everybody loves like the gardens or the manor house, but our facilities for athletics here are actually amazing too, and the weight room is definitely my favorite spot.
My favorite spot on campus would either be the glade outside of the athletic facilities or South Campus.
What is my favorite spot on campus? I really like the back porch of the manor house. It looks out on Mount Hood, and on a clear day, it's super beautiful just to sit around with friends.
Welcome back to lcpioneers.com Live, presented by PiosStream. Thanks again for joining us on this Thursday. Facebook Live is where you can find us on Tuesday and Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time. We have 2 guests per show, and biggest gratitude to Josh Walter for joining us in the first half of the show, talking about the campaign, Exploring for the Global Good, the new fundraising campaign for Lewis and Clark College. We got to talk about some of the exciting things that it'll mean for athletics, as well as what you can do in the short term, and then obviously looking forward to homecoming in 2021 for the fall term as well. One of the best parts about the show, obviously, has been able to catch up with past student athletes at Lewis and Clark, and that is our chance today with former men's golfer. We are excited to welcome in Robert Wang to the show. It's good to see you. It's been a long time, it feels like. I mean, class of 2019. How have you been? I mean, it's been a long journey since we last saw you, I think probably at the Northwest Conference Championships, right? What has been the last year and a half for you, obviously, with a pandemic in the mix?
Oh, man, Ryan, it's so good to see you. Thanks for having me on. It has been a crazy year and a half, 2 years kind of a thing. I can't believe it's been so long since I've been out of college. It feels like it was just yesterday that I was just there. But I mean, pretty much for the last year and a half, 2 years, I've just been working my tail off. I was in a tech company for a while named Splunk, and I was there for about a year and a half. And then, COVID ended up hitting us real hard. And next thing you know, they're starting to dwindle down on sales and employees. So I actually got laid off during the pandemic, but it's actually a little bit for the better. So now I'm actually working for my uncle and selling wire mesh. And it's a building material that I've, never really explored. And I've been here for about a year coming up in August, and it's been awesome. Just being able to learn all the types of uses and things like that has just been awesome. So that's what's been pretty much going on. I just got engaged about 4 months ago now. And, it's my high school sweetheart, which is awesome. We've been dating, since senior year of college and all the way through Lewis and Clark. Some of y'all know my fiance now, which is so weird to say, but amazing to say it. But besides that, man, just living the dream and, trying to, keep up with what's going on and, just trying to get by at this point. But it's been an awesome experience just in the last year and a half, 2 years.
And I think of the sport that you were in, obviously, golf. I've talked to this a little bit to those who competed, like in track and field. There's certain sports that I've always perceived to be one that you can kind of keep with, obviously, after your competitive time is done. But that doesn't mean necessarily either your competitive time post-graduation is done. Either way, when it comes to the sport of golf, what have been some of the ways that you've kind of stayed in touch with that sport you competed for the Pioneers in?
So pretty much golf has been in my life since I was a young child. And it's definitely one of my getaways of how I can, it's like a therapy to me. I'm able to walk around and, be able to take in the lovely outdoors like we've not been able to do for the last year and a half. So I've been really trying to take it all in now, and just be more appreciative towards it, just because this last year we weren't able to go outside for a while. And the only thing that you really could do is play golf or go on a hike. So I decided to take up back golf again, really, just ramped it up a lot and starting to play 4, 5, 6 times a month. Not as much as back in college, which I wish, but I'm still playing a decent amount of golf for how busy I am now.
Yeah, and the origin story is always important to me, Robert, because I'm curious, what was it about the chance to compete, to get your education at Lewis and Clark that really appealed to you and why you chose Portland?
Well, so the first thing was I was getting recruited for football to play quarterback for them when, we were going through the whole coach changing with Low C. And so now I was really looking forward to that. And next thing you know it, I tore my ACL and I met a amazing guy named Jonell. And he really brought me into his arms and took me in as family. And he definitely was a person that has been really impactful on me throughout the years, and that I've always been able to talk to no matter what, and we're still in contact. I'm actually going to be in his wedding here pretty soon. So that's definitely one of the, people that really brought me on to Lewis and Clark and really made me feel whole at that point. Even though he was older and even though he, only had a couple years ahead of me, it was still awesome just to be around him and his personality and all of, his geniusness, just really helped me out a lot.
Robert Wang is our guest, a class of 2019 alumnus from the Lewis and Clark men's golf program. And obviously we talked about the pandemic and some of the difficulties being laid off. And in that circumstance, I'm curious, going through an injury like you did, how difficult is that? Was that the first time you had a serious injury? Walk us through what that moment was like as you kind of pivoted to golf.
Yeah. So pretty much I played golf and football through my high school career, and I've never been hurt in any one of the sports. And my last game of my senior year in high school, I tore my ACL, and I ended up recovering pretty quickly, but then ended up having some blockage in the scar tissue. There was some scar tissue around my ACL, so I wasn't able to bend correctly and whatever. So ultimately I made the decision that I wasn't gonna, make it to the NFL or, go out and be, balling at playing football at 55, 60 years old. I just knew that wasn't the practical answer at that point. So I pretty much decided that what was the one sport that I could play until I was 90 years old and still have fun with it, and that was golf. Golf to me has just been such a life-changing sport, and a full 4 hours on 18 holes is just it's totally different from any other sport that you'll play. And realizing that brute force, and I'm not 6'5", and things like that I'm able to just take it out on a golf ball and just be able to take it like a therapy, like I said before. So that was one of the biggest things that I took. And plus, my entire family plays golf. All of my friends now from pandemic have played golf. So it's just been one of those things where it was a dying sport at the time when I was starting to change back over to it. But now, since everything that's been happening, it is just it's a blown up sport. It seems like everybody and their grandma wants to play. So That's where I'm kind of at it there.
And that football connection's interesting, right? Because then my brain goes to, okay, we have a pretty unique golf coach at Lewis and Clark, because you have somebody who's had experience coaching wide receivers in the Northwest Conference, and now is the head golf coach for Lewis and Clark, both the men's and women's program. That's James Yen. What was it like to compete and obviously interact daily with Coach Yen?
Oh man, James Yen, that man is the GOAT. He is the best. There was not a thing that I could not go to him and talk about. Having him, me playing football, I was like, I think the only one on the golf team that played football prior to the golf team. And he and I having that connection of just how football works in general and the mentality towards it, and how different it is compared to golf and football is just, it's very mind blowing, but there also can be very similar points to it. And, some of those things were like, how do you manage a bad interception, comparing it to like a bad blow up hole in golf? Or, missing a tackle or whatever it might be. How do you, manage those emotions to be able to block it off to the next play? So it was cool being able to talk to him about those types of things and having the football mentality. The team, most part of the team was all, football pros. So it was a good time all the way around to be able to, talk to him about those things and do it that way.
So it sounds like, too, you talked about being taken under the wing of a fellow, student, right? And you talk about the coach's impact. And for some reason, Lewis and Clark, mentorship, that community's kind of always stood out to me. It seems like firsthand you experienced that. How has that had, or how will that, I should say, maybe have an impact on you long term in the way that maybe you choose to mentor?
That's actually not funny that you say it, but it's a great point. Joe was the first person that I met that really took me under his wing. And there was Drew Groshong came around and really put me underneath his wing while I was on the golf team and while I was injured and trying to figure out what was going on. And it really made me realize, how important it is to have good family and good friends and, the type of attitude that you're with, because it really, shows kind of the person that you are and how you're going to react at the end of the day. Those guys really brought to my attention, a lot of things that I would have never really thought about prior to them. Whether it be, a sport or whether it be academics or whether it be just in my personal life in general. They were just good people to go talk to about pretty much anything. So I've noticed for myself with my friends or, my niece who's going to be 12 next year, which is insane to me, how I would react to them and how I would, talk to them about certain things. And it's just being, open, no real comments about anything, just being opening and listening and, giving your little input. It doesn't have to be, something that's tearful and jerkfully tearful. It just has to be, something that gives them a different perspective at that point. So I definitely have learned a lot from them and how I will talk now to a lot of my other friends and family and how I want to, maybe teach my kids as they grow up, in 10 years kind of a thing. So that's how I've been looking at that.
Robert, it was great to get to know you while you were on campus. Certainly excited for your engagement. Congratulations again, and wish you the best of luck going down the engagement to wedding path. You're always so kind to me, and I always appreciate that. Thanks so much for taking time to join us on lcpioneers.com Live.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thank you for having me on, and anytime, man. I hope to see you soon.
Likewise. Thanks so much.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Robert Wang joining us on the show. Class of 2019. And honestly, prior to the interview, I had not remembered that Robert came to Lewis and Clark originally for football. And so what's fun about this show is getting these stories and getting a chance to hear about how, everything from mentorship within a team. But Robert's story, what's unique is mentorship transferring from one team to the next. You thought the path was path A, and you go down path B, and hearing how impactful Joe was on Robert's experience at Lewis and Clark, and still to this day, I mentioned being in Joe's wedding. That's really great, and I think it's neat to hear those stories kind of come full circle. And then, of course, the connection between Coach Yen originally being an assistant coach for Lewis and Clark football and then transitioning to the head coach of the golf programs. And if you look back at any of our past shows, and I mentioned this a ton, right? YouTube.com/LCPios. That's where you can find all of our past shows. Almost every student athlete that we've had on from the golf program to talk about the coaching staff mentioned so many of those names that we hear: Drew Groshon, Aaron Benedetti, and then of course head coach James Yen. What a cool experience for Lewis and Clark golfers, and I can't say enough to Robert. Thanks enough to Robert for coming on the show and sharing his memories about that as well. It really is exciting. I want to give one more plug for the new campaign for Lewis and Clark, and that is Exploring for the Global Good. It is a fundraising campaign that got kicked off last month. Josh Walter was on earlier in the first half of this show, the Vice President for Advancement at Lewis and Clark, and gave us some perspective on exactly what this campaign means for Lewis and Clark, and certainly what the campaign means for athletics. It was a really worthwhile conversation, got a lot of perspective about what this campaign will do. And if you would like to get involved, one of the favorite places I like to send people is to go to go.lclark.edu, because there you can look for the people, places, and programs. Go.lclark.edu/kickoff. It was the kickoff landing page for the campaign, and I definitely think it's worth, because you get that opportunity to see all the impact that you're going to have if you decide to participate in the campaign. Josh said the aspect of being able to contribute early is a big way to impact the success of that campaign for the long run. And of course, everything from the We Believe project down at the Houston Sports Complex to little things that help recruit and retain more of our student athletes. It's pretty exciting to hear what that campaign has in store for Lewis and Clark Athletics. So thanks again to Josh for joining us on this show. That's it for this week. We are on vacation next week, almost for a week and a half. So our next show will be 2 weeks from today, but we do plan to keep the show going as student athletes return to campus, being able to stay in touch with alumni, and then of course spreading more information about what the staff, the faculty at Lewis and Clark does to impact the student athlete experience. That's been a fun aspect of the show that we plan to continue going into the fall 2021 semester. So thank you so much for being with us. I am Ryan Goff. For Josh, for Robert, our guests today, and for everyone who hung with us on Facebook Live, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you again 2 weeks from today for more LCPioneers.com Live, presented by PiosStream. Check out all of our past shows inside the fan zone at LCPioneers.com. Until then, goodbye, everybody. Thanks so much.
We invite you to join us.
It's time to explore Lewis and Clark.